Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
For over 50 years, Burlington's legacy has been great deals on coats for all weather conditions. So before you're caught unprepared for the winter weather, head to Burlington for name brands, quality items, and surprising fits for every family member. Stock up on coats, sweaters, and accessories before the cold hits, so you can finally stop avoiding the elements and start living comfortably. Warm up at your nearest Burlington location less than 1 mile away. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow.
Ah yes, the magnificent Trolley Sourbright Crawler, also known as Trollicus brightolus. The worm's captivating neon colour makes it an easy, gummy prey.
Trolley!
It's a surprisingly sour, invitingly chewy, staggeringly snackable species unlike anything else found on this planet.
Eat me!
Delicious. Visit Trolley.com to shop now.
Trolley, eat me!
EVO. This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Across the vast Atlantic, wind-swept and merciless, the ship, the Mayflower, made its way toward the American coast in the winter of 1620. On board, a group of weary passengers clung to visions of religious freedom, escape from persecution, and the dream of a life carved from the wilds of an unknown land. These were the Pilgrims, separatists fleeing the strictures of the English Church, bound for a place where they hoped to cultivate both land and belief, far from the watchful eyes of monarchs and bishops. They arrived not to open arms or warm hearths, but to a biting wind and a cold, rugged shore. With little knowledge of the land, the Pilgrims of Plymouth Colony faced a winter that would leave their numbers decimated, their dreams nearly extinguished. By the spring of 1621, their numbers were half of what they'd been. The remains of their dead hastily buried to avoid alarming the nearby native tribes. The colony's survival depended not on divine intervention or their own tenacity, but on the intervention of the Wampanoag people, who, despite every reason to distrust these strangers, chose a path of cautious alliance. And so began a precarious dance between two peoples, each holding the other in careful regard, and each, on some level, wondering how long peace could truly last. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to our dark history of Thanksgiving. The Wampanoag had been wary of these visitors, as word of their arrival to the south had reached their lands. They knew that the voyagers on these ships of wood and cloth carried with them an incredible advantage: technology. And for a simple reason. Agriculture had spread across Europe thousands of years before it reached the Americas. The rise of agriculture led to the rise of technology, and that technology was represented in the awesome power of sailing ships, metallurgy, blacksmithing, and firearms. And those were the advantages that the native peoples could see. There was something far more dangerous that lay hidden. Disease. Diseases for which they had no natural immunity. As the first green shoots began to peek through the frozen earth, an indigenous man named Tisquantum, known to history as Squanto, emerged as an unlikely bridge between the two worlds. Squanto's life was one marked by tragedy, betrayal, and resilience. Years before, he had been captured by an English slaver, dragged to Europe, and sold as property. Yet, against the odds, he had found his way back to his homeland, only to discover that his people, the Patuxet, had been decimated by those European diseases. Alone in a transformed world, Squanto had reason to despise these newcomers. Yet he approached the Pilgrims, seeing them not as enemies, but as desperate humans, people who, despite their strangeness, could very well prove to be allies in a time of shifting power among the native tribes. He taught them how to cultivate corn, how to fish the rivers, how to forage for berries and herbs, and even how to fertilize their crops with herring to improve the yield. To the Pilgrims, his aid was a gift from God himself. They couldn't see, or perhaps refused to see, the sadness and the reluctance behind his broad smile. To the Wampanoag, Squanto was both a blessing and a source of tension. Chief Massasoit, whose own people had suffered from disease and were wary of both the Pilgrims and rival tribes, saw the possibility of alliance in this foreign presence. And so, as the harvest season approached, he accepted an invitation to break bread with these settlers. He brought 90 men with him, more than twice the Pilgrims' number, and they shared in a meal of venison, fowl, and the fruits of the autumnal earth. This first Thanksgiving, so often painted as a time of simple harmony, was anything but. For the Pilgrims, it was a day of gratitude. For the Wampanoag, it was a calculated risk, one taken out of a need to protect their people during a time of great uncertainty. The peace forged that day would be short-lived, and as years passed, it would become clear that it was not a permanent alliance, but a fragile and uneasy truce. As the years wore on, Plymouth Colony grew, joined by more ships bearing settlers hungry for land. With each passing year, the Pilgrims' relationship with the Wampanoag grew more strained. As English colonies spread across the eastern coast, the settlers' need for land increased, and each new plot they claimed pushed native communities further west, often onto land that was less arable or more vulnerable to the attacks from other tribes. For the Pilgrims, their right to the land was ordained by both law and God. For the indigenous tribes, it was a theft justified by nothing but power. With expansion came inevitable conflict, and skirmishes erupted between the colonists and various tribes, often sparked by land disputes or simple misunderstandings. Treaties were signed with native leaders, but these were very often manipulated by colonial authorities to favor the settlers. Land was parceled off, forests were cleared, and resources were harvested at rates that would have once seemed unimaginable to the tribes. In many cases, the Wampanoag and other indigenous communities found themselves with no choice but to cede their ancestral lands, forced into unfair agreements by colonists who wielded both political and military power. Massasoit, the Wampanoag leader who had once broken bread with the Pilgrims, saw his people's lands shrink year after year. His efforts to protect his people through diplomacy became increasingly futile, and he passed away with the knowledge that his decision to ally with the settlers had sown a future that he could not control. His son, Metacom, also known as King Philip, would inherit this legacy and come to see the Pilgrims not as his allies, but as occupiers. The peace that had once been symbolized by that first Thanksgiving was now irrevocably shattered.
For over 50 years, Burlington's legacy has been great deals on coats for all weather conditions. So before you're caught unprepared for the winter weather, head to Burlington for name brands, quality items, and surprising fits for every family member. Stock up on coats, sweaters, and accessories before the cold hits, so you can finally stop avoiding the elements and start living comfortably. Warm up at your nearest Burlington location less than 1 mile away. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting. Go to your happy place for a happy price with Priceline's Black Friday sale. Save now and travel later with our best deals of the year.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
From your fryer to the table, it's a quick trip for crispy fries. But how about a crosstown delivery? McCain SureCrisp fries are designed to go from fryer to container to carrier to passenger seat across town during rush hour down a shortcut that wasn't all that short to a doorstep before they hit the table. And that first bite, the crispiness speaks for itself. To the last bite, McCain SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
In 1675, King Philip, as Metacom was called by the English, launched a rebellion against the settlers, a final, desperate effort to reclaim his people's land. King Philip's War, as it came to be known, was one of the deadliest conflicts per capita in North American history. Entire villages were destroyed, and brutal tactics were employed on both sides. Indigenous warriors raided settlements, burning homes, crops, and livestock, while colonial militias responded with equal ferocity, massacring entire tribes and selling captives into slavery. The war lasted nearly 2 years, leaving an indelible scar on both the land and its people. Metacom himself was killed, his head displayed on a pike in Plymouth, as a grim reminder of the fate awaiting those who resisted. His wife and son were sold into slavery in the West Indies, their fate sealed as punishment for daring to stand against the tide of colonial expansion. The Pilgrims had fought not only for survival, but for dominion, and by the end of the conflict, their vision of a new world had come at an unfathomable cost. What had once been a fragile peace was now a smoldering ruin, the land itself marked by battle and blood. And though the war had ended, the transformation of the land would continue as more settlers arrived, clearing forests, planting fields, and building towns upon the graves of those who had come before. For the descendants of the Wampanoag and other indigenous peoples, Thanksgiving became not a time of celebration, but of mourning, a painful reminder of the lives and lands lost in the process of colonization. As centuries passed, the memory of that first Thanksgiving began to shift. By the time Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday during the Civil War, the story of Pilgrims and Indians sharing a peaceful meal had been mythologized beyond all recognition. The truth of the violence, betrayal, and broken promises that had marked early colonial history was replaced with a narrative of unity and brotherhood, one that suited a young nation in need of symbols that could unite a fractured populace. The holiday became a celebration not of conquest, but of gratitude, a time for families to gather and reflect on their blessings. The darker history of Thanksgiving was forgotten, reduced to a footnote in the grand American story. And while children learned of friendly pilgrims and helpful, quote, Indians in school, the reality of what had transpired between the settlers and the Wampanoag remained largely unspoken. In Plymouth, tourists flocked to see Plymouth Rock and replicas of the Mayflower, eager to touch the symbols of America's very founding. But the graveyards told a different story. The names carved into the headstones of Burial Hill, the bones of Metacom's warriors lying beneath unmarked soil, the echoes of those whose lives had been cut short. All of these reminders persisted, a silent testimony to a past that could never be fully erased. Today, Thanksgiving is celebrated in homes across America, a day marked by feasts, football games, and the warmth of family. But for many, particularly indigenous communities, it's also a day of reflection and mourning, a reminder of what was lost in the name of progress. In recent years, the holiday has taken on new meanings as more Americans come to question the mythology surrounding its origins and confront those darker truths embedded within it. Indigenous activists and allies now observe Thanksgiving as a day of mourning, holding vigils and ceremonies to honor their ancestors and remember the true cost of colonization. On the very land where the Pilgrims first gathered with the Wampanoag, descendants of those tribes hold gatherings of their own, a way to reclaim a history that has been misremembered and reshaped by centuries of American narrative. As families gather around their tables, many are beginning to include moments of acknowledgement for the land and the people who came before. The history of Thanksgiving is not erased, but woven back into the fabric of the holiday, creating a more honest and complete picture of America's origins. And though the story is one of sorrow and struggle, it also speaks to the resilience of those who have survived, who continue to fight for their voices to be heard in the telling of America's story. Thanksgiving's story is one of complexity, beauty, and pain, a legacy as rich and troubled as the land itself. It's a story that speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, to the ability of a people to endure even in the face of unfathomable loss. And while the myth of Thanksgiving may have served a purpose, the truth is emerging as a new generation seeks to reconcile with the past. In the end, Thanksgiving's true meaning lies not in a myth, but in an honest reckoning with history. A history that asks us to confront the uncomfortable truths beneath the surface. And it's in this reckoning, maybe, that we find the seeds of a new gratitude. Not one born of denial or triumph, but one grounded in humility, remembrance, and an acknowledgement of all that has come before. Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for listening. Make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You could also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and now full episodes available if you're more of a YouTube person. Check us out. Thanks again, and until next time, stay safe out there.